My father was a civil engineer, but he would dabble in all kinds of things.
On the weekends, he always worked in wood. So I spent a lot of times when I was very young hanging out in his wood shop.
He was always exposing us to art. He painted, he did jewelry.
He also, I think was just really instrumental in introducing me to seeing things in a new way.
And he would, there's something about having a parent that has an eye. Because when you're driving down the road and you're going on vacation and all of a sudden they say, look at the light. Look at how the light's affecting that tree. There's you grow up with that and you observe differently.
We would go hiking and sit by a little, lake somewhere, and he would find little teeny things, cigarette cellophane and some wire and little stuff. We just sat there and he would make a whole little dragonfly and hand it to me.
We had a very nurtured upbringing, and we are very similar in personalities and in how we work and how we approach things. So I think it is it does have to do a lot with the environment in which we've been raised.
So yeah, we grew up in a creative environment, I think. I feel so lucky to be able to have a sister that we trust each other's aesthetic completely, and we can ask each other, questions, and we're in the same medium even. So it's nice to be able to do that.
We're kind of like soulmates, and we just sort of connect all the time. And whether we're whether we're an artist or we're out socially or whatever, I think there's just a true connection. Currently, both our work is figurative, so that's a commonality.
But I think our work looks really different.
If you were to look at them physically, there's a difference between how they're built and the color that I use, and she doesn't often use a lot of color. The shapes, the forms. So there's a lot of differences there. But I think we do have the same sensibility. We have the same aesthetic.
We're both sort of attracted to the same aesthetic. Sometimes she'll call me and I'll be working on something, and she'll talk about what I'm working on as an idea she's working on. And so it's almost sometimes a telepathic sort of relationship. We both have the same kind of energy around our work.
We do have sort of that same sensibility in terms of putting a quiet sort of solitude, strength in our work, and an emotional sensitivity. So I think that's where the commonality lies.
To me, my work is about an inner life and an inner strength. And I try and convey that in the pieces that I build. And I just like the pieces to draw you in quietly, it's part of the reason I don't use bright colors and bright glaze, even glaze at all. I use the raw clay body a lot. The lack of color and the sort of raw clay body all to me says quietness. I think when someone looks at a piece, I want them to sort of, be drawn into the piece, but then sort of exhale when they see it. That's sort of, what I strive for in the features and in the piece itself. I just feel like we have so much frenetic energy in this world right now, and there's so much going on, and everybody always needs to know the answer and the reason of everything, and it's so easily accessed now, the answer to everything on Google, right? So, to me, my pieces provide a space of contemplation. So to approach them, and it's a quiet space, and it's a space of contemplation that I think we are beginning to lose. At this opening I was just at in Portland, a young woman was talking about the piece, looking at it, and she said, it's almost like the body is just not important. Is that what you're trying to say? That the body's not the important thing, it's the internal life? Because that's what I see in it. And I love it when people have their own interpretation that makes me even see it in a different way. So I think even if someone stops at the aesthetic point and isn't looking for a deeper meaning, it's affecting them in some way, or they wouldn't stop and look at it. So whether they're creating their own interpretation of it, that's fine with me.
She keeps quiet. She keeps it introspective.
They're not always gender specific. I don't know, I make males and females, and a lot of times you can't tell if it's a male or a female for sure. It is intentional. I don't want it to be about that.
Tyler and I have always been close, even though there's an age difference with us. And I wouldn't necessarily say I'm closer because of the ceramic, but it is something that we really love to share.
We've always been visual artists and had that in common, but I think once we both started working in clay, then yes, we are doing residencies together. We call each other up all the time to ask technical questions and learn from each other a lot. We've done many workshops together. So that has definitely strengthened our bond, I think.
I'm really inspired by my sister and her work, and the approach in which she takes to her work. She has a sensitivity that inspires me.
I think her work has a strong feminine energy. I think that but I think it's also very playful and a little bit flamboyant and larger than life, which, to me, they emit a strength in that way. And that's who Jane is. To me anyway. She's a very strong woman. Her work you can look at and the closer you get, the more you learn about it and the more you discover. And I love that in any art.
Well, I mostly work with the female figure or female figures. I have done some combinations of males and females together, but I keep coming back to working with a female figure. And I wonder sometimes myself why I stay with that. And I believe it's because it is somewhat of a reflection of myself, and that it is a growth that I'm going through and that I'm exploring. There's definitely a infinity and connection to other women, and it's an emotion that I'm getting across, and I'm not sure I can get that emotion since I'm not a male. I'm not sure I would get that same emotion across if I was doing male figures that I feel and experience as a woman with other women and talking to other women. And so most of my work is based on the female figure.
I love clay. I love working with it. And clay itself for me is very grounding. Something about grabbing that hunk of earth and just having it in your hands and working with it. Well, what's interesting about clay is it has often been classified in the craft department. And so clay has had a hard time elevating itself to the level of painters, or people that sculpt in metal or other objects, and I don't know why, but I guess because clay is often associated with pots, and so in the art world, a lot of times things that are made purely of ceramic are not acceptable, and they're considered a craft. It's changing. I see it change. I've seen it changing just in the last 10 years dramatically. I love feet. I think they can convey actually a lot, and I like the unexpected quality of that, how you're looking down at the feet and all of a sudden a toe is up, and it sort of signifies a playfulness or something. Also, they represent to me grounding and balance. Grounding is just very important to me in my life. So I'm talking about a physical and an emotional grounding. Grounded in yourself and centered. And I think that, part of my work is about an inner stillness and a strength, and part of that is feeling centered and grounded. I don't think I think of it consciously, but yeah, they're bare feet and they're touching the earth, and I need my bare feet touching the earth a lot. So yeah, grounding in that way. I think that a lot of spirituality always feels so serious. And, I just think that bringing a lightness is important, And so I have fun with it. That's part of it. So it's bringing a playfulness to the work, but I think you probably also see that I have fun, making the theme.
When I'm starting out a piece, there's a lot of just the left side of my brain working. It's all the technical stuff. It's working out in my head. Okay, well, where is this going to go, and how do I have to start it? And there's all of those sort of questions in my mind. And what I'm thinking when I'm working at that point is about those technical little detail issues. As I move into the piece and I'm working with the piece for a while, especially when you're working with clay, it's so seductive, but as I'm working into it, it becomes, I guess I soften, and it becomes more intuitive. It is like a meditation. So when I get in the zone, I'm not there anymore. And, life can, anything bad in life can just disappear because, I'm just in that zone. And it does become a very meditative process because, sometimes my brain will go off and think about what am I going to cook for dinner. But usually it's focused on the piece, and it's like the breath. So you're bringing the breath in and you're bringing the breath out, and for me, I'm just coiling and going around and thinking about the form and what's developing, what's coming out of that, and where am I going to go from there. It is like a dance. I can just feel that shift, especially as it gets closer to my size. I'm building more of a relationship with this piece, and it becomes more intimate. I have this relationship with her, and then as I build larger and the piece becomes larger than me and rises above me, there truly is a spiritual connection with my work. So at that point I am usually somewhat in awe of it. There is some separation anxiety when they sell. I am very connected to the girl. I call them the girls right now with this series, but I am very connected to my work. And one of the things that I really enjoy doing is showing up at the collector's house, whether I am involved in the installation or whether I'm just there or I meet them prior to that. But it's really exciting for me to see where they're going to live. It does take a while before I get into that mode where I can just build freely. And it depends on the technique. More the slab technique, where I'm building an armature and putting paper foundation underneath it and adding clay to it afterwards. All the technical stuff is going through my head when I'm actually physically building the armature and when I'm adding all the newspaper chunks to it, because then that's building the sort of the initial form. It's a really fun way to work. I love just being able to take the big slabs and throw them on. It's a quick process. When I can just throw the clay on and again, I have to really be cognitive, not to overwork it, not to touch it too much, not to, to try to let it do what it does best. It just allows me to do some really unusual different forms, and allows me to work in more of a additive, subtractive fashion than the coiling does. I can work a lot looser with the armature than I can the coiling. I try not to spend a lot of time second guessing myself, because that's why that's me getting in the way of my work. It's my head getting too involved in the work, and I like to work fast. I like to work intuitively. I like to work as an emotion, as a feeling. And if my head gets into it, then that's like a technical reproduction of something. And so I try to stay out of my way there and be as fluid as I possibly can.
Usually when I'm in the studio, I'm 100% here. And people will come in and try and talk to me, and a lot of times I just can't have another conversation because I'm 100% absorbed in what I'm doing. But when I leave, I don't always take the piece with me. I think about it sometimes. I'll be like washing my face, and I'll just like start feeling, oh, okay, that's the part I couldn't get today. Was how this indents here, and then the next day I'll remember that. Yeah. I feel like I'm still exploring the reasons of my work, and I feel like I'm still discovering why I do things the way I do. I think a lot of my work is instinctual. So I feel like I'm still a beginner in a lot of ways, and so the faces to me are often a surprise to me. So I'll go in the studio, and of course I know I'm going to make a face that day, but I don't sketch my work, so I'm not planning a specific sort of piece. And I think that, it's kind of cliche, but almost each piece is like a birth. And all of a sudden there's, when I get to a certain point in it, there's this new person in my studio. I often work with music, and usually when I'm working on a face, I turn the music off because I kind of like the silence, and it's almost like I feel like I need to give the piece its due reverence. A lot of times it's how I'm feeling too during the day. And because a piece is not always finished in a day, sometimes it will evolve and change, over the days that I'm working on it, depending on where I'm at and what my mood is.
She has an amazing eye. And then her faces that she builds are very serene. She has an Asian feel to a lot of her work.
I think that the Asian influence that people see was instinctual. It just came out, and a lot of people ask me about that. I think that face to me emotes a peacefulness. Yeah, sometimes a face will go from feeling, sad and angry to peaceful and happy, so a lot of the emotion changes. But what's amazing in a face is you can change, the slight corner of a mouth and the whole expression changes. So a lot of it is sort of detail oriented in that way, to get the feeling. I often will do a face to a certain point, and then I need to walk away from it. So I'll come back the next day, look at it, and start again. There's a stillness to them, a stillness, a quietness, a being in the moment aspect to them, for sure, that I'm hoping they're conveying. Yeah.
We do have a lot of similarities in terms of how we feel about life, how we feel about connections with people and with the universe and with nature and everything else. And I think both of our works express that.
I think that's true. The source of the work does come from the same place. We have a lot of the same interests and, of course, the same upbringing and the same parents. And I think that that's just it. A lot of its source is the same, but it translates differently, into each of our work. Well, I used to only work in clay, and then the metals came in, and then the wood. Um, sometimes I still do a piece that's all clay, but I don't think I'll ever give up using the other materials. I love industrial things, and I think that bringing the metal in, and wood, it makes my work more interesting. I think that it comes from my dad, hanging out in my dad's shop. I did a lot of that with him. My sisters were all older. They were teenagers, so they were in their own world, and it was just me. So I have 3 older sisters, and then there's quite a few years, and then it was me. So it was sort of me in my dad in his shop building things. Yeah. So I think I'm influenced by definitely, what I saw growing up with my dad, but I think partly living in LA too, the industrialness of it. And, I don't know, I think I first of all, I'm sort of an alley scavenger. I've always walked in the LA alleys and picked up pieces of rusted metal and things I find and incorporate them if I can. So I think it's maybe the alley influence. I can't remember how I first came to copper. I think, we had a piece of copper around here, and I was looking, to add an element to a piece, and I just stuck the copper on, nailed it in, and I thought, oh, this is a nice material to work with, and, you can patina it in all these different ways, and so I just kind of fell in love with it. And then the lead, the lead's a little more toxic, and I have to wear gloves with it, but it's so malleable and easy to work with and does whatever you want. I think it's my love of the material. The message to me is the piece itself when it's finished, and maybe the expression, or maybe the feet. So there's different layers and different things going on, but the materials are pretty much aesthetic. I'm just attracted to them, like to work with them.
Showing layers on the outside is not a necessity of the material. In fact, it's more traditional to blend both the outside and the inside while using clay. But it does allow me to build things in sections so that I can I can build in sections and you don't see necessarily where those sections lie. So it does allow me to fit the pieces in my kiln at the size that my kiln allows and put them in sections. But now they have taken on their own life. That whole feel of layering is so important to me. It's what in terms of expressing the history of things, the growth of things, the age of things. Yeah, it's been important for a long time. I mean, I come from a painting background. I mean, that's what I'm schooled in, and so I try to take that into my work, and truly, the sculpture is my canvas. So the sculpture, I build the sculpture first. It's not a flat surface, but it's a form, and then I paint on it. So, and I do it with glazes. And it's a little bit different than painting because it's not what you see is what you get. You have to sort of guess and know what it's going to look like after the firing, and then if it doesn't work, you have to glaze it in different ways, and it's just adding another layer. Really, I need to think and not see. I mean, I can see the texture, I can see the drips, I can see that type of thing. But I really need to think, okay, well, that green that is copper that I put on is going to be black. And even though I can't see any of it right now with the glaze on top of it, it's all going to seep through. So I need to know that it's under there. I need to know, the bright blue glaze that I do is sort of a chalky white that you paint on. I use copper carbonate, which is powder, mix it with water or with something else to hold it together, brush it on my pieces and wipe it off, and all of the crevices and all the little, flaws that we have all stand out. Copper usually comes out dark, but the glaze will affect how the copper reacts. If you put copper under a certain glaze, it'll turn green or blue, and it bleeds. If you fire at a high enough temperature, the color bleeds out from it. The color for me is part of the expression, but it also comes from the fact that I am a painter. That's just part of my layers. That's part of my history, my experience. Now, I use a lot of layers. I have layers in the process. I have layers visible on the sculpture, in the clay body, and then in the writing, and then in the glazing technique. All of them are done. Some of the glazing techniques done like a painting, where I'm doing underpainting and more layers of color or different glazes on top, scratching through, adding more layers. And it has to do with my interest in experience and in the layers of our lives and of our ancestors, and so I'm very intrigued with all those layers. I love the way you see layers in nature, so that you can pick up a rock and see the layers in a rock. You can see the layers on the side of a mountainside and how they shift. It all represents the time and the space that has occurred. I'm really intrigued with things that have held life, vessels that have held life. So like the shell of a hermit crab and all the layers that are wrapped around that, a cocoon, and the layers that are created in a cocoon, and they're all vessels that hold life or have held life. I treat the human form as a vessel. So, we're just all vessels. We're just vessels for whatever to flow into us and flow out of us, but we're all vessels. So when I have changed that vessel into the figure form and continue to work with it, I leave it open at the top. So it truly is a vessel still, and that there's still openings for possibilities or enlightenment or whatever. And so that's sort of where I see that transition from the vessel into the figure.
I think what I do love about Jane's work is the layers that she creates, and not only the physical layers of the clay and how you can visually see them, but also the depth of the story that she writes. Her work embodies the feminine a lot, feminine issues and reality.
Some of the writing on my work has to do with women issues and how we, growth and transitions and a lot of different subjects, but a lot of it is there as a story. When I'm writing, I don't just write a story in a circle around it. I'll write in certain areas, and I'll change the direction of the writing. I'll write over old writing, and visually, of course, I'm always looking at how that works visually. Sometimes I'll write smaller and heavier where I want a shadow to be, or a darker depth in space. So sometimes it actually creates more of depth in a sculpture where I'm writing deeper. I'm speaking to the whole humankind, to remind them that this is the beauty and the strength of women, and it's not an exterior thing. It's an interior nurturing, supportive strength that women hold. And then often I'll write on top of the story of a different story. And I feel like we all have these going on in our lives. And when you really break them all down, that's all they are. They're just stories. They're not reality. The fact that I have to go do all this stuff, or I have a laundry list of all these things that I have to get done, or that I have to make so much money, or that I have to, have a job or a house or a car, or any of that is all just a story. And so some of that writing has to do with the fact with the idea of how we lay all of these meanings onto things, stories onto stories onto stories, and that really all they are just perceptions of something. Or we're brought up certain ways to think that this is the way it should be, and how we really do have that power within ourselves to change that perception, to change, how we feel about ourselves and how we feel about, the people around us.
My mom was a yoga teacher in the 70s. And so, when I was 8 and 9 years old, I was going to yoga. And I actually think yoga has an influence on my work too. There's a sort of a Buddha Zen quality to my work. I definitely think yoga influences it. But anyway, she introduced me at a very young age to, that type of thinking, and the power of the mind and the power of, our beliefs. I'm a very physical person, and that's why I do the work I do. And so, no, yoga for me is a very physical grounding for me. I need that. So it's not just the mental and the spiritual, but it's the physical environment of it and the work. I think that a lot of the work in yoga is being still and being within. I have a series called Energy Rising, and all their arms are up. So it's about, bringing the energy of the earth up through your body and out. Definitely an influence of yoga. There's a lot of things going on. The binding does address our limiting belief system. The expressions, that sort of represents more of the internal life going on and the strength that we draw from the internal life. I definitely think some of them are focused more on the negative aspects of belief, and those are the beliefs that that I think sometimes we hold that control us and don't let us be free and don't allow new possibility into our lives because we believe a certain way. Using the leads and using the copper and the binding element that I use. It's meant to show, especially in the Bound by Belief series, it's meant to show how contained we can be and how limited we can make things in our life, mainly our beliefs. And I think that using the lead is like a heavy material. It represents, the weight of decisions, the weight of beliefs, and wrapping and having it mold to the figure and to the body is how I see how we carry a lot of our beliefs. They can be a heavy weight, a heavy burden on us, and yet they're molded to our body. They're close to us, and they're sort of second skin.
A lot of our perception is, it's just not true. It is just our perception. And what's interesting about that too is that we can change our perception. So that, and again, that's how I like one story on top of another.
It's about our beliefs in general, and how we can limit our lives by having certain beliefs.
We have this whole perception about for example, how I can't do this. I can't be an artist. I can't, I'm not good enough.
And beliefs about ourselves, like maybe we're not good enough, or we aren't capable of doing this. And
that's one perception that we have, and we can just change that.
I truly believe that the mind is powerful, and the beliefs we hold about ourselves hold us back.
Nothing in our environment has to change for us to just ourselves change our perception.
When we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. So that's one of my favorite quotes.
So I think that's pretty powerful once you realize that.
I think it's about yourself and internally, not about how other people perceive you or what they expect from you.
guess, I mean, I don't think I got into it because I wanted to leave a mark, because I wanted to leave something behind. But it is really nice to know that my work will be there much after I'm gone.
I suppose I like the fact that something that I have made will remain after I'm gone. A piece of me and a piece of my creativity, a piece of my heart will be left. I like that.